This is the Badger247 podcast with your host, Evan Flood.
Man, am I glad I did not finish that podcast on Sunday. I would be looking pretty stupid right now if I published that thing. Basically gave it zero chance that Paul Chryst was going to be fired after the 34-10 loss to Illinois. Just stunning development. I was on a lake all day having some adult beverages, let's say. I had to whip that thing back home real fast to deal with this news. Was not ready for it whatsoever. Think we'll have a good show today, though. Don't need to talk about Illinois too much, obviously. That's kind of old news. But we do have some inside scoops on what's going on. I got to be sensitive in terms of how much I say. A lot of people confided in me, and you know, there will be a time and place to really air everything out, but I don't think today is that day. However, there is some juicy stuff going on within the program that we're going to talk about, and it's important for the rest of this season and the future of this Wisconsin football program overall. Let's just start with the firing itself. There was a mass consensus among the media, people with any type of relation to that program, that Wisconsin would not make a move of this nature. If they were going to do it, the thought was it would be after the season. Let Chryst play it out, see if he can right the ship. More likely than not, he was expected to be the head coach in 2023 as well. I mean, this was a Wisconsin guy, Wisconsin native, played for the Badgers, had done great things in his time, but was obviously going through a severe rough patch with a bottom that I don't know if we've seen this bottom since. I mean, you hate to overreact to one game, and it's not, but in terms of what happened at Illinois, being beat down 34-10, where you've kind of got this lifeless sideline, lifeless stadium. Obviously, there have been bad losses in the past, but we're talking about an unranked Illinois program that might not even make a bowl game this year. Who knows? Obviously, they're 2 wins away, but there's no guarantees for them. That program had been to one bowl game since 2015. To make matters worse, they did it with Wisconsin's former head coach, Bret Bielema. So in my lifetime, I don't know that there's been as bad of a loss. I'm not old enough to really remember some of the early Barry Alvarez seasons, but I'm guessing it's safe to say with where the program is right now and where Barry had it early, the standard has completely changed. And a loss like that to an Illinois program that Wisconsin's beaten 18 of the last 20 times, hadn't lost to the Illini at home since 2002, I'm guessing that's a bottom this program hasn't seen since before the Alvarez era. So why make the move after 5 games? Why not let Chryst play it out, see if he can turn things around? He clearly has not lost his locker room. His players are still fighting for him. There is obviously still some hope that you could win 8 or 9 games, right? All was not lost. It doesn't undo all the damage that's been done, but certainly there's some stuff still left to play for. I think it almost goes without saying, you don't really need to overthink this one. Jim Leonhard is that reason. Wisconsin absolutely loves and adores Jim Leonhard. They do not want to lose him to another school. They've been very fortunate in the past that he has stayed loyal to this program and turned down some huge defensive coordinator jobs at other programs. I'm sure there's been head coaching offers that have come his way as well. Obviously had the chance to jump with Matt LaFleur in the Green Bay Packers as their defensive coordinator, yet he stayed at Wisconsin. So if you let Chryst play things out, right now you got a window, right? Wisconsin hasn't seen this type of bottom in a long time. You've got a window to swoop Jim Leonhard seamlessly into that head coaching position. You let Chryst play it out and he turns things around, that window could be gone. I think that's a reason why this is happening mid-season and not after the season or in any off-season as we all anticipated. I think athletic director Chris McIntosh sensed an opportunity and he pounced on it. Because this move is sort of unprecedented for Wisconsin sports, right? They don't operate this way. I mean, they haven't even fired a head coach in 30-some years, Don Morton. And now we're talking about a guy in Chryst who was just let go. And here's the other part of what I'm hearing. But we're talking about a guy in Chryst who was just let go after he's won 65% of his games, 70% in Big Ten play. He's 6-1 in bowl games. He's got a pair of New Year's Six bowl wins under his belt in the Orange and the Cotton Bowl. He's got 4 10-win seasons under his belt. He has and did take this program to new heights. Say what you want about Paul Chryst and whether or not, this was the right thing to do. It's got to be insanely hard for the Badgers to let him go mid-season knowing his resume and what he did for this program. He had them on the cusp of being maybe not a consistent national contender, but a program you felt like year in and year out could challenge the Blue Bloods and eventually sneak their way into the college football playoff. So a little more about what I'm hearing is that McIntosh wanted to send the message, and this is a message that a lot of you have been dying to hear for quite some time. Being stagnant, being content with mediocrity isn't going to be tolerated in Wisconsin football anymore. From some of the conversations that I've had, that's been the message that they are trying to portray and sell this around. McIntosh is showing a commitment to the players, to the fans, to the donors, to the higher-ups in the athletic department, whoever it is, that Wisconsin football wants to take that next step as a program. And he's committed to making that happen by any means necessary. I think, like many of us, McIntosh had sensed that the gap between Wisconsin and the likes of Ohio State and the big boys of college football was widening. More discouraging and more frightening, that gap between Wisconsin and the rest of the Big Ten West foes was shrinking. I probably should be careful with what I say, but I don't think McIntosh is alone in this decision, and I'm fairly confident that someone's words still mean a lot in this program and carry a lot of weight. I'll leave it at that, and I'm guessing a lot of you can put 2 and 2 together on that one. The next part of this, and it's not really a scoop anymore because a lot of the players have gone to Twitter and voiced some frustration or put some cryptic messages and pictures out there, but I'm told this was a very short meeting between McIntosh, Chryst, the coaching staff, and the players. I mean, we're talking 5 minutes, maybe. Started at 6. I mean, by 6:00, I don't know, it wasn't even 6:10. News started leaking out of that program. It was short, it was sweet, and I don't think I can't speak for all the players. I'm not even trying to speak for any of them. But I don't think there's a lot of support in this decision, and that's going to be a huge hurdle for Leonard to overcome here early. The good news is the players love Leonard. Everybody, like I said, everybody loves Jim Leonard. But everybody loved Paul Chryst too, and there's some hard feelings in that locker room. I think the players probably take some responsibility for this. You can tell by their words in the media on Saturday. I mean, they went to bat for the coaches, and they didn't even know that this was coming down. I mean, they put the blame squarely on themselves for that 2-3 start and what happened on Saturday against Illinois. But I feel pretty confident in saying that this is not a widely accepted decision that Chris McIntosh made. Last thing I'll talk about, what's on everyone's mind, obviously. You're going to see a lot of hot board stuff. You're going to see a lot of candidates, and their names being thrown out there. Right now, the only name you need to worry about is Jim Leonhard. This is absolutely his job to lose. He's got a 7-game audition here. I think things would have to go very, very wrong for him to not be named the head coach in 2023. As I just touched on, I think a big reason, I can almost guarantee a big reason why Wisconsin made this move is because of Leonhard. I'm telling you flat out, the decision makers absolutely believe in this guy. It's also been the worst kept secret in Madison that this is who Wisconsin envisioned taking the reins for Paul Chryst when his time was up anyway. It just so happens his time ran out a lot sooner than any of us could have predicted. But just for the sake of filling up some time here, let's just go down the list and look at some candidates in case Leonhard does not take this job and run with it like we all expect him to. The name at the top, is obviously Lance Leipold at Kansas. Got his coaching start at Wisconsin under Barry Alvarez. Won 6 national titles at Wisconsin Whitewater. If you can win like he's doing at Kansas, off to a 5-0 start, what could you do at a place like Wisconsin, who is by no means, one of the sexier programs in college football, but in terms of fan base, facilities, campus, money, commitment to the football program, etc., Wisconsin blows Kansas out of the water in that regard. As good as Kansas might be this season, they're not going to recruit at a great level either. It'll improve, no doubt. Winning solves a lot of your problems. But if Leipold's able to find diamonds in the rough and bring them to Kansas, or even some heavily recruited guys and get them to Kansas, again, imagine what he could do at a place like Wisconsin, who can sell a lot more in terms of a total package. Problem with Leipold? Are you just delaying the inevitable with Jim Leonhard? Can you keep Jim Leonhard as defensive coordinator if you hire somebody else? Leipold's also 55. Is he in his prime right now? Has he already passed it? Doesn't exactly scream innovative and willing to keep up with the changes that are going to take place in college football here over the next several years. But I think character-wise, mentality-wise, he fits Wisconsin in a lot of ways and really embodies that brand, right? As good of a hire as I think that would be, do you get more bang for your buck with Leonhard, who you don't have to overpay? You don't ever have to worry about him jumping ship and leaving for another program. And you've got him for a really, really long time. He's 39 years old. If you believe in Leonhard, that he is the next great head coach in college football, why put it off, right? If you could hire Nick Saban at 28, you do it. It doesn't matter. The age doesn't matter. Not trying to lump them in the same category, but I don't know if Leipold's that much better of a candidate than Leonhard is. And the hype around him right now, obviously what he did at Whitewater was special and may never be replicated again. But a lot of his hype right now is really based off this special season, this one season that Kansas is having. With Leonhard, I think you know what you're getting. And like I said, I think from a bang for your buck standpoint, I think maybe you suffer a little more earlier as he gets his feet wet into being a head coach, and we'll know a lot more after these 7 games. But the upside and the reward you'll get down the line is likely greater. The guy who I think should be at the top, and this is, kind of the exception, I think you may hire over Jim Leonard if you can get him, is Dave Aranda. Dave Aranda is the GOAT when it comes to Wisconsin defensive coordinators, right? I mean, his imprints are still on this program today. Wisconsin still runs that 3-4, still runs a lot of the same concepts that Aranda implemented when he arrived in 2013. He's coming off a special season at Baylor, 11-2 in 2021, won a Sugar Bowl, won a Big 12 title. Obviously had those 3 really great defenses at Wisconsin, had a couple more at LSU as well when he left to become defensive coordinator. I know Dave Aranda a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to call him an acquaintance or anything, but, we've had talks, and he was nice enough to even grant me an interview after he left. The one thing about Dave Aranda, why I do think it's a reach as a candidate, but I don't think it's impossible. He and his family love Madison. They loved their time here. I don't think they wanted to leave. You just can't, I mean, money talks. Everybody's got a price. You can't turn down $1 million in the SEC from LSU. I think ideally, if the price was right, Wisconsin definitely could have kept him. They're just not going to be able to compete with $1 million salary for a defensive coordinator, or at least at that time. Things have obviously changed a little bit today. They love living here. And you can't discount what's happening in college football with these super conferences forming and the Big 12 potentially being on the outside looking in. So there's a lot of Big 12, ACC, Pac-12 coaches that are kind of in a difficult situation here. I mean, Dave Aranda's got something good going at Baylor, but can you sustain it when Texas leaves for the SEC? When Oklahoma leaves for the SEC, and all of a sudden that Big 12 conference isn't relevant anymore? If Aranda does want to make a move, it would be a much easier transition. This defense already knows the system. He knows Madison. He also knows how to recruit to this program as well, and did a fine job in that aspect too. And he did not have an easy job. He was more down, obviously because of his ties, California a little bit, Utah, but he was really all over. He had some guys in Florida and Georgia as well that he was going after. So, he's recruited the Wisconsin brand on a national scale as well. Something that will also translate to helping you be a head coach here, because as we all know, recruiting to Wisconsin is tough when generally at most you can count on 5 or 6 kids coming from your own state. That's a great year if you can get that. Most of the time it's a kid in California, a kid in Texas, a kid in Florida, 2 kids in Illinois, 2 kids in Ohio. You got to sprinkle around. You got to be able to sell it everywhere. And Aranda does have that background. He's also been a coach coast to coast as well in a variety of different conferences. So he knows the lay of the land of a lot of different states. So in addition to what I said about the defense, and that's another reason he makes maybe more sense than Jim Leonard. Now, obviously, you may have to worry about a blue blood snapping up Aranda again, because unlike Leonard, there's no guarantee that Aranda would stay long term. The roots just aren't there. There's some, but not enough to stop a big-time program from coming in and snatching them up if things go really well. But as a recruiter, I give Aranda a big nod over Jim Leonard. One of the reasons why I don't hate, I think it might be moot now, but I don't hate if Wisconsin were to let Jim Leonard go, is he'll get some head coaching experience, and he needs it. He also needs more recruiting experience. For all the good things about Jim Leonard, he has not recruited all that well. He is in charge of the defensive backs, the secondary, for the most part. You're not going to be able to tell me he's necessarily evaluated that position all that well. I mean, even in Wisconsin's heydays, 2016, 2017, 2015 was he wasn't here yet. So 2016, 2017, and then 2019, one of the big things holding that program back was the inability to match up with these spread offenses and these dynamite wide receivers that these schools would throw at Wisconsin. I mean, they just couldn't cover the whole field when you had 3 or 4 big-time athletes and playmakers at the wide receiver position. I mean, it was big plays used to kill that secondary, right? I mean, even the last couple years, that's still been the case. They get gashed. And for the longest time, Wisconsin almost had just one cornerback, one safety you could rely on. I mean, if you can't build your secondary to the point where Wisconsin needs it to be, my question would be, why do you think he can build an entire team? And I'm being kind of hard on him. He's young. He had no coaching experience when he came here. So the bar that I'm putting on him is probably higher than it should be, but that's the world we live in now after this decision. Like I said, McIntosh made it very clear, being stagnant, accepting mediocrity is not acceptable. So, and draft day, right? We live in a different world than we did a minute ago. I can be content with you being a great coach. As an assistant, I can be content with you being a great coach, but a subpar recruiter. As a head coach, you got to be both. So if Wisconsin fell out of that group of 3, I'd be really surprised. Like I said, I think a lot of this is moot. Based on where we are today, I'd be really surprised if Jim Leonhard isn't the head coach in 2023. That's just the way it is. I'm not going to rule anything off the table because there are 7 games that he has to perform, but everybody wants this to happen. Other names we talked about, Sean Lewis at Kent State, obviously probably going to interview former Badger tight end from 2004, 2007. Not a great record, but it's Kent State, 21-27, won a MAC East championship in 2021. That was a pretty good season for them. They had a number of impressive records getting shattered. And, as an offensive mind, Lewis is exciting in that regard. He had some great years in Syracuse as well as their offensive coordinator. People throw around Matt Campbell. I don't know if I buy that one yet. I mean, I haven't heard anything concrete to really know, but he's mentioned for every job. It kind of falls in the mold of, not mold, but the thinking with Leipold. If you can make Iowa State relevant in the Big 12, what could you do at Wisconsin? But again, knowing what I know about Wisconsin and the way they operate, they just think long term, right? I mean, I'd be really surprised if this job went to somebody who didn't have ties to the program. Darrell Bevell, probably a long shot, been in the NFL his entire coaching career, but he's always mentioned for any offensive coordinator or head coaching opening at Wisconsin. Maybe a sneaky good name. Jake Dickert, Washington State, just beat Wisconsin 17-14 a few weeks ago. Wisconsin native, grew up bleeding Cardinal and white, played his college ball at Stevens Point. I don't see that as a better hire than Leonhard. You're talking about a guy with the same age. They're off to a 4-1 start right now in Pullman. They are looking really good. Maybe he can get Cam Ward to come with him. Maybe that's a package worth exploring. I don't know, but it is kind of a best of both worlds situation for UW. Who desperately needs some new ideas and new blood. You get a young, hungry, up-and-coming coach who probably views Wisconsin as a dream job. But, again, you hire a 39-year-old Wisconsin native, you can kiss Leonhard goodbye unless that guy's fired. How about Brett Bielema? Would they? Would they ever do that? I doubt it. But you could kill two birds with one stone here. He just slapped Wisconsin up and down the field. Not only you get yourself a coach who's won 3 Big Ten titles with you, knows how it's done, knows what it takes to win with the program. You get to take down a Big Ten West rival too in Illinois. Again, probably a long shot. I doubt even Brett Bielema would entertain that, but there's a fit there, and Bielema looks like he's got Illinois going in the right direction. Dave Doran, NC State, not buying that one, but you got to throw him on the list. Wisconsin defensive coordinator from 2006 to 2010. Badgers were 49-15 when he was on staff, including that Big Ten title in 2010. I mean, he revitalized a dormant NC State program. He's 91-54 there. They were just in the top 10 nationally before that loss to Clemson the other night. It was 21-8 over the last 3 seasons. Again, ACC, are they on the outside looking in with these super conferences? Maybe makes sense. A name, I like to reach out to the coaching circle just for maybe names I'm overlooking, but also, people know who's looking to jump ship and move on to the next level. A name that got thrown out there, Dave Clawson, Wake Forest. Very affordable for Wisconsin, only $3.6 million. Wake Forest has been really good the last couple of seasons. They were 11-3 in 2021. They're 4-1 right now. Really explosive offense. He's won everywhere he's been. He has a conference or division title at all of his stops. Wake Forest, like Wisconsin, not an easy place to recruit to. You got academic standards you got to deal with. North Carolina, there's more talent there than there is in Wisconsin, but you're also splitting it between a couple of Power 5 programs. So those 11 wins that Clawson won last season at Wake Forest was a program record. Last name, touch on Mel Tucker. I think you throw him out the window right away when you see he's making $9.5 million. He's one of the highest paid head coaches in college football. Why? I don't know. But he is a former Badger. Maybe you can get a hometown discount. Obviously had that great year with Michigan State in 2021. Won the Peach Bowl, went 11-2. This season, not going so well. I think he's a long shot, but, he's got ties to Barry Alvarez, played for him. And the best thing you can say about Mel Tucker is he's got juice, right? I mean, that program, it's got a different vibe to it these days, and that's Mel Tucker putting his stamp on it. Some people like that. I don't particularly care one way or the other, but he's certainly done some great, and it's helped them in recruiting. I mean, they're getting guys to East Lansing at a high clip right now. Second part of this show, let's just dedicate it to healing. Remembering the Paul Chryst era. How will he be remembered? How should he be remembered? I know there was a lot of animosity between him and the fan base, these last couple years, specifically the last couple weeks. Regardless of what you think about him as a head coach, Paul Chryst was a phenomenal person that cared deeply about his players and about the Wisconsin football program. I said this a couple weeks ago about some of the stuff I saw that was being said about him, and I thought I needed to check some people. I mean, I'm with a lot of you. His tenure over the last 3 years has not been acceptable. This season, to some degree, has been a train wreck. But Paul Chryst is one of Wisconsin's own. Paul Chryst played for this program. Paul Chryst grew up in this state. There's a certain way you treat your own, right? And some of the stuff that was being said about him, kind of crossed the line. And just to give you an insight into the type of man Paul Chryst is, he could have gave Chris McIntosh the double-barrel middle finger, took all the money he was worth in that buyout. Instead, what did he do? He negotiated it down and left some for the program. He didn't have to do that. He was owed $19 million. It was reported he took 16, and Chris McIntosh is saying Chris agreed to even less than that. I don't know about the rest of you, but if I'm ever fired abruptly without cause, I'm taking everybody down with me that I can. I'm going down in flames, right? Like, I think that's just your natural reaction. I'm being a little silly, but I'm trying to make the point. Paul Chryst, at his lowest point, I can't even imagine what that'd be like for him to go out like this. And for him to do that, I think that kind of tells you the type of guy he is, because he's probably, a bigger man than most of us. Like I said, I think most of us would have a completely different response in the heat of the moment. Also remember, Paul Chryst took over during a difficult time. This was after Gary Anderson left town. Didn't really know what the direction of Wisconsin football was. He came in and revitalized it. He gave the Badgers that stability that they were craving. Wisconsin was on its third head coach in 4 years. It was kind of an unstable time for the program, and Chryst brought that stability back and did it quickly. That absolutely needs to be part of his legacy. It's obviously a tough time for him right now. There are wounds that are going to take some time to heal. But I think when all is said and done, we will look back on his tenure as a favorable one, even though it ended rather unfavorably. 13-1 in 2017. A bad call away from going to the college football playoffs and beating that Ohio State team in 2017. Orange Bowl champs, defeated a top 10 Miami program. 10-16, got to 10 wins, won a Cotton Bowl. Remember, navigated that gauntlet of a schedule where Wisconsin opened up with, 4 or 5 top 10 ranked opponents in the first 6 or 7 games. You remember it because of that schedule. There were a lot of people that didn't even think Wisconsin was going to make a bowl game. We also have to talk about Paul Chryst, the recruiter. Many of you who have, been with me from the early days of Badger247 knew I was not a big fan of this hire from a recruiting standpoint. He's got the 3 best classes in Wisconsin school history now, at least in the internet rankings era, which is really the only data you can point to anyway. Now, we can debate whether or not that's a good thing, because a lot of these guys are on the field now, and it's not going well. But he was not supposed to be a very good recruiter. And it was kind of a downward... It felt like Wisconsin moved down when they lost Gary Anderson and went to Paul Chryst from a recruiting standpoint, right? Remember Anderson and the juice he had was getting in Wisconsin involved in battles that they had no business being in. And, recruiting from a fan standpoint really jumped off in the Anderson eras. And it did not get off to a good start under Chryst. Missed a couple in-state guys early. So he was able to figure it out to some extent and continue to show that Wisconsin can be a force nationally and steal some talent away from the Blue Bloods. So he took that aspect to new heights as well. And if Wisconsin continues to have success like they have the last 30 years, if they're able to pick up these pieces and mold it into something better and not only get back to where they were in 2017, 2019, 2016, wherever, or go above that and hit the next level as a program, Paul Chryst is going to be a reason why they were able to do it. All right, so let's just wrap up there. I just want to get something out and get you guys a little insight into what I'm hearing before this kind of becomes old news. I'm going to try and reach out to a former player and get their take. I got a couple fish on the net right now. We'll see if I can land them for the fish on the net, fish on the line. They're not in the net yet. See if I can get one of them to maybe kind of give their reaction. Obviously, someone relatively new in terms of having played in the program recently, who knows Paul Chryst, still has connections with people on the team. Maybe kind of get some insight there. So we'll see how that goes. Might be a 3-podcast week. I don't know, depending on time. Fortunately, these things become really crazy. It's funny. I always kind of laugh at some of my colleagues when they have to deal with this, and I always kind of think to myself, thank God I'm covering Wisconsin. You just don't have coaching drama like this on the regular. And yet here I am. So I'm not sure what I'll have for time this week, but it's going to be busy on the site no matter what. Fortunately, we kind of all know who the next head coach is going to be, barring a catastrophic turn of events like Wisconsin not making a bowl game or coming up way short of making a bowl game is probably what that would take. Even then, who knows? But we will come back later in the week, hopefully with some more coaching juice. Got to look ahead to Northwestern, and can Wisconsin pick up the pieces and beat a Wildcat team that's looked pretty awful this season, although they weren't bad last week. Only lost at Penn State 17-7, so that's not looking like the cakewalk it once did either. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. I got to get back to writing and finding out what's going on with the commits in this 2023 recruiting class. See ya.